Let's go ahead and start the meeting. I'll go ahead and call it to order this beautiful December 12th at 5:30 p.m. Start off with a roll call. Jessica Middle.
Here.
Larry Jackson.
Here.
Sharon Joseph.
Here.
Robin Kauser.
Here.
Richard Laughlin.
Here.
Sam Childers.
Here.
Joe Salinas. Amy Slaughter.
Here.
Move on to the chairman's statement. The Historic Review Board is an advisory board appointed by the City Council. My name is David Bully, and I chair this board. It is the function of the board to consider all applications for certificates of appropriateness for properties in the historic district and for landmarks. In considering whether to approve or disapprove of an application for a certificate of appropriateness, the Historic Review Board shall be guided by the City of Fredericksburg design guidelines and standards and the Historic Preservation Ordinance. If anyone present wishes to speak in favor of or in opposition to any item on today's agenda, please sign up on the persons to be heard sheet at the back of the room. It is not necessary to sign up to speak if you are the owner of or representative for a project on the agenda. You will be called on as the case is called. Approval by this board does not take the place of any type of permit. Permits must be obtained for all work. No work of any type is to be started without obtaining the appropriate city permits after a certificate of appropriateness has been issued by the Historic Preservation Officer. So moving along to item number 4, approval of last month's November meeting notes.
I just had a quick question. So is the city attorney on the call? Is that why it says she's present? Because I guess I didn't realize that she was.
Good question. So last month the city attorney was on the call. I'm not sure if that's the case this evening. I know Anna Hudson is joining us by phone.
Yes, I'm here as well.
Okay, and you are?
With Delverton. I'm with the attorney's law firm.
Okay, great. Thank you. Approval of the minutes for last month. Have you guys had a chance to look at them? Any comments, edits, or additions? Not would accept the motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those same sign, or opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Let's move on to the certificate of appropriateness applications. We have 2 applications tonight. Let's start with application 23-190107 North Acorn. If you're present today, if you come up to the podium and introduce yourself and tell us what you'd like to do.
Mr. Bullion, I don't believe the applicant's here this evening.
Okay, so we will pass that to next month. Moving on to application 23-201503 West Austin. So recognizing Mr. Laughlin Reclusa. So if you're here presenting that application, please come up to the podium. Tell us who you are and what you'd like to do.
Good evening. I am Melissa Estes, and I'm the interior designer on the project. I work with the homeowners.
Okay.
And just wanted to discuss the building in the back, the old garage that's a metal building, and the reasons why we want to remove it. So First reason is to put the new guest house location there, which is basically for their adult children. They will never SDR it. They'll never sell it. They'll stay in their family. But in that space is a very old, old is a relative term. It's a metal building that it's like a barn, but it's about 6 feet, and we've got some picture, we've got some photos of it somewhere. The ceiling height is about 6'3". You can't make it into any kind of a structure to live in. I mean, to live in or to use as a guest house, nor store cars or maybe motorcycles on it. It foundation is unstructurally correct to even build on it. It's just not. It won't work. The basic argument is it's non-functional because the ceiling being slightly over 6. It's constructed both new at the time, 70 years ago, and salvage materials. It has a non-structural cement foundation, as I just mentioned, and it doesn't meet any of the current building codes. Bypass doors, barn doors, do not seal, nor can they be made to seal in this type of construction, and the building's full of rats and mice. Although the garage sits on a highly rated property in itself is 70-odd years old, younger than the original stone home that we have been restoring for the last several years. Richard Laughlin's crew and me working with them. Actually, this building in the back actually detracts from any of the goodness we're doing in the front and any of the restoration on all this limestone. It has been I'd say so meticulously restored and cleaned and put back the way it should be. As far as the outbuildings, we did restore the original little smokehouse and put it over to the left side of the property in the back. There it is, and it's very stable. It's great. It has a stone floor from some of the old materials there on the project. Now going to the guest house that we're proposing. It's a story and a half, little bitty thing, but it will block some of the craziness to the west of the drunken bridesmaid house, which is the house is notorious. You can see her right there on the right, the yellow one. So as far as the ADU finishes, we will not match, but just blend in everything that we have in the original house. There won't be any new crazy anything. As I said, it will not ever be used for an SDR. They do not like to do that, and it's like we said, we truly positioned it in that corner to block all the mayhem next door and behind. And then also to appreciate the beautiful landscape. We've got a landscape designer out of Austin that I've worked with on some other jobs, and he's just fabulous. He's using all Texas and even Fredericksburg native design with walkways and whatnot. So the front porch is facing to the east on purpose because there will be a little vignette area there for the backers, adult children to have some privacy back there with them up front, with the kids and whatnot. This landscape you can't see much here with this landscape design, but it's going to be spectacular. The crepe myrtles are the tree of Fredericksburg. I didn't know that until recently, and we're using a lot of crepe myrtles and a lot of native.
Okay. Thank you very much. Shelby, you want to run through the application?
Thank you, Ms. Estes.
You're welcome.
As Ms. Estes mentioned, the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to demolish an accessory building or shed, as well as construct a 704 square foot story and a half guest house at the rear of the property. The property was built in 1870 and is a high-rated property in the vernacular style. It is an outstanding example of architecture with only minor alterations and retains much of its original form. The zoning of the property is R2 mixed residential, and the demolition, let's see. As we look at the demolition of the property, staff has cited several sections from the historic design guidelines and standards for your review. The demolition, removal, or relocation of a historic resource with a rating of high, or removal of the historic resource with a rating of medium, is strictly prohibited. However, there is an exception. Any resource with a rating of a medium or a low may be relocated within the same tract of land which it is located. There are additional exceptions. The additional resource may be demolished or removed if the board determines that it is hazardous or a dangerous building. And I believe that's Ms. Estes' claim this evening. In the case of a demolition application, the board shall find that the reasonable measures could not be taken to adaptively reuse, rehabilitate, or restore the resource on the existing site, or that reasonable measures have been taken to relocate the resource to a new site first within the same property, or secondly within the historic district, or thirdly to an area that will be enhanced by the resource. When reviewing lot coverage standards in 3.4.1, staff looked at the zoning as the baseline for the maximum lot coverage and found that the zoning ordinance sets the baseline for the maximum allowable lot coverage. These standards require contextual assessment of all lot coverage based on the surrounding historic properties, and in many instances, the lot coverage permitted by these standards will be less than the maximum permitted by the zoning ordinance. There's preservation listed for avoid removing historic resources or landscape features in order to construct a parking area, a new accessory building, or new landscape features. That's section 3.4.3. The proposed accessory building has a footprint of approximately 700 square feet, which is less than the main house and is located at the rear of the lot, which is consistent with historical lot development patterns and does not overpower the historic resource. While the accessory building will be located at the rear of the property, it will be visible from the street and is oriented with the side of the building facing the street and the front facing the interior of the lot. The default designation of an accessory structure is that of the main structure. As such, the metal barn structure carries a high rating. Staff has not seen justification for the demolition of a high-rated structure and cannot support without more information. Staff plans a site visit before the Historic Review Board meeting. Unfortunately, I'm not certain if that occurred. Outbuildings tell an important part of Fredericksburg history and should be retained whenever and wherever possible. The lot is large and has sufficient space for a guest house without the removal of the historic feature. The original plans approved by the Historic Review Board showed the barn to be kept. The requested new construction is appropriate in both mass and scale and follows traditional development patterns. The first design submitted showed the barn to be retained, but a second version replaces the barn with a modern guest house. Staff recommends a door or shed roof be added to the north elevation to give it more of a traditional accessory building appearance as it faces the street.
May I comment?
Yes, ma'am.
There's also going to be food, talking about having the guest house. I think staff wants the front door to face the street, but there's going to be two fences, so it won't be visible from the street. I mean, slightly, you'll see the structure, but the front door won't be, and then with all the landscaping there. And the other little tidbit I forgot to throw in is that would be the 200-foot driveway going all the way back to that guest house, which just encroaches on so much of their landscape. And when we were laying out trying to keep that barn, even just because it was probably 10 feet between the barn and the guest house, cluttering up the backyard, making it not what it's really designed to look like. I mean, I don't think that it's taken away from all the time and thought to make it beautiful, to clutter up guest house, and then that barn is just there's not enough room coming off of the back of the house.
You have anything else, Shelby?
No, sir.
And Anna, were you able to go by and do a site visit, or any of your staff?
So unfortunately, no, I wasn't expecting to come down with COVID when it did. So I wasn't able, I visited years ago when Richard first on this project, but I don't recall, because I think we had assumed they were going to keep the shed, so we didn't spend too much time looking at it. But, generally, as I said in the recommendation, I mean, we should keep these structures whenever possible. We've required other people to keep them. And if it's definitely not feasible, then I think we could look at, could it be relocated on site, or what pieces of it have the most value. But the lot size, the lot layout, this type of built shed barn building in the rear is very typical of old Fredericksburg. And we're just losing that piece by piece. And I mean, this obviously is a huge investment that they've been making to this lot. But I would want to say that, well, this is an old ugly building and it's not pretty enough for their, for their nice new stuff, I would follow that rationale. But so I hate that I wasn't able to make the site visit. But I would like to explore all possibilities, demolition being the absolute last resort.
Okay, thank you.
Just a little side note, in the beginning, I actually wanted to keep it. I mean, I thought, let's work with it. But then when we, let's work with it and somehow restore that as a guest house. But then when we started getting into all the details of it, and it's not structurally sound. It's 6 feet, 6'3", it goes on and on and on. So that's when it just went, this doesn't work. Maybe pieces of it could be used. Of course, that's a Richard. You'd have to weigh in on that.
So let me go ahead and open up to the board. You guys have any comments? Was anybody able to go by and do a site visit other than myself?
I did not know. But I did.
Any
You
thoughts
would have been
on-
scared if you went in there.
Any thoughts from the outside?
Well,
I snuck in.
my thought is, based on Anna not having her staff on the site. When the original, was it on the original bids were done, doing all of the restoration and construction was going on, was it, at the time, what's now being used as the playhouse, was that in those plans to be relocated?
So that we could put the guest house on the right, and the smokehouse was right in the middle of a tree getting ready to fall on it that we restored and put over to the left.
So that was originally in the plan to make that. Y'all got that clear?
Yes,
Okay.
I mean, I wanted to keep it, originally, and then it wasn't feasible. But we knew we were going to try to get a guest house on the right. If it could be that building, it could be that building. But that building is just it's too dangerous to even deal with it. So that's when we moved the smokehouse and restored that to the left so they can have a playhouse for their grandchildren. And then it just balanced out the property completely by doing that. And I get it. I mean, I have a bunch of historic homes on Selwyn Crossing, and that's all I do is deal with restoration of those. But it's got too many problems. I mean, it's the ceiling height, the foundation cannot be built on. I mean, it's just going to be like a open air. I mean, it can't be sealed. I mean, structurally, it's dangerous to work with.
I guess it was on Friday. I was walking by, so I just walked in and took a look at it, went back to the back. It's hard for me to say that it's a high-rated structure. There's a few cedar posts for the main post, but probably 50% or more of the main structure posts have been replaced. All the ceiling has been scamped in with fairly new 2x4s. I couldn't find a square nail on it. The roof to me looked like it was probably from the 70s or 80s as well. So I didn't think that it should be a high rated structure, but without re-rating ancillary buildings, the ancillary buildings always carry the same as the main structure. So in my view, you should probably re-rate it to a lower than high rating.
I mean, it's definitely comprised of salvage and salvage material, and then not even old. I mean, it's just
Well, I did see some. There was probably maybe 10% of it was probably long leaf.
yes.
Mainly in the big planks, 12 inch. You're probably going to want to harvest that anyway.
We're going to use that anyway.
Yeah,
We're going to use anything like that in the guest house for
Yeah.
sure.
And so maybe is there a possibility to harvest what you can and build maybe much smaller shed to kind of help tell the story of Fredericksburg? It doesn't, maybe not the same size, but
I haven't talked to him about it or my clients, but that was a thought for me, is just to maybe take, if we have enough room in the very back.
it looked like it's been kind of bumped out a couple times anyway, like typical stuff.
It's a mess.
Board, I mean, please chime in.
Lucy, you said that the farm, hi.
Hi, how are you?
You said that the barn was a lot newer than the house,
Yes, definitely.
70 years newer. You have
Give or take.
board maps or something that prove that?
Just from the materials is what's we've sort of estimated that from. The materials are just they're salvaged and they're. Let me go back to my notes here.
What about the use of the building? Was it a carriage house, or has it always been a shed? Or do you have any evidence of animal life? Or
It wouldn't have. It's not tall enough to have been. I don't think a carriage house. I think it was just a storage. I think that they just needed a storage back there because the driveway didn't go all the way to it. The driveway stopped. And if it went all the way down there, then maybe they were using it as that in the later years, but it just stopped. I think it was completely storage because it was just filled with a bunch of stuff when we took it over.
The doors look like garage doors. They're not.
They're those
It's not a
barn.
garage.
No, they don't even close. They won't seal. And
I know, but
oh,
those
sorry.
sliding doors like that, that's what's on my
Right.
garage.
There's like
Yeah.
with the hardware on, you can see it, and they're not that.
No, those aren't old.
Not as old as the building.
Oh gosh,
No.
I wouldn't think so.
We conducted an estate sale there 4 years ago, and I spent 6 weeks in and around that barn, and we sold about 1,000 feet of longleaf pine. So maybe they were going to build a good structure there at one time, but we had to go in and brace it up just so my staff would go in to even take stuff out of it. And it was completely full with a few snakes and stinging scorpions, but I was there every day for 6 weeks, and it was a hazard the whole time, especially when we unloaded or took away all the lumber that was piled on one side, on the left side of it there. The building that was holding up that side of the building.
But to Anna's point of losing all the outbuildings that we have around the city, is the fact that it's in bad shape the reason to tear it down? If we tear down all the people, just let them go, and then we tear them down, pretty soon there won't be any outbuildings left at all.
I think if I were the builder, I would build my guest house on the other side and just wait a couple of years it'll fall down.
To me,
And mess with our landscape plan completely.
when I crawled inside of it, it looked like it had been expanded at least once, based on, because there was a couple, from my memory, a couple cedar posts, and then they had more newer posts on. I don't know if it was just replacement of rotted wood, but to me it looked like that from the original size. I mean, you couldn't tell. I was looking for the Smitty's part, or stored cheap, but I couldn't find anything that looked very old. I was looking for square content. And the foundation looks like it was poured. It's one of those, you build it and pour the foundation inside.
It was very uneven and very.
Looks like a dump of wool.
Yeah. It's a wheelbarrow. I sold the wheelbarrow too.
But to your point, Sharon, I agree that the ancillary buildings tell a story for the property. And so if by chance this one is allowed to be demolished, then I think we need to have some type of representation of on the site. Tell the story.
is this building beyond repair? I mean, obviously it can't be made into a guest house, but is it in and of itself beyond repair?
Richard thinks so, and he's right here. It's weird that I can't hear him talk, but yeah, because of the foundation and just yeah, it really is. And the ceiling height. I mean, 6 feet, so you can't you can't use this garage. It's just storage is the only thing I think that it could be used for. I mean, like I said, I haven't discussed this with Richard, but possibly the idea of taking some of the oldest parts of it and making a small storage area to the back corner over there behind the guest house where you could actually see that from the street. You knew there's still some of that old buildings back there. So it seems to be wanting to have these old out buildings is important. So if it was revised materials to tell a story that way.
In one of the diagrams in our package, it's on, I think, page 17. There's a proposed guest house to the front and a existing shed to the back. Is that it was just drawn that way, and that's not a proposed.
I assume that was probably submitted.
What page? Okay, previous application. I got it. Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I think all of us on this board are hesitant to demolish any high-rated structure, particularly if the staff has not had a chance to visit it and make their own assessment and report that to us. So if a motion is made to demolish tonight, I won't be in support of that.
Any other thoughts, concerns?
I can co-sign.
So we're waiting for staff to make a visit. If they make a visit, they're going to come back with an answer pretty much like their answer now, I would imagine. Because, Anna, am I right? It's in bad shape, but it still is an outbuilding. So visiting is really not going to change much, in my opinion.
The only thing to demolish it, I think you'd have to re-rate it. I don't think we can, in our right mind, demolish a high-rated building. So I think that the one thing that staff could do is give us an indication of, is this a high-rated structure, given the history of the property and the materials used. So I would look at city staff, comment on that.
But it's not
Yeah,
the bill. Go ahead, Anna. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, is it apparent where there is an original section and then that was added onto? Do you feel like you can define, okay, this is the original structure and this is what's added on, or is it just really all cobbled together?
From my 5-minute tour inside, waiting for the cops to come to kick me out, to me it looked like it just hodgepodged the whole structure, and you really couldn't tell any definition other than it's just been piecemealed together over the years, like a lot of structures. I agree with that.
Because it's not the building or the quality of the building that makes it high rated. It's the fact that it's on property of a high rated building.
Well, but
You
the age of it makes a big
can't
difference.
change the shed to medium or low if it's on high
We've done
property.
that.
No, you can't.
Yeah, we've done
You
that
can't.
many times. Yeah, so like, for instance, a high-rated property, somebody built a shed in 1975, and they want to tear down the shed. We've re-rated the outbuilding before.
They have some mileage fee. What we end up doing that? They put in for the barn now. Is that what we used to do?
Oh, that's last year, or earlier this year.
We allowed them to tear it down, or they tore it down.
I believe it was a safety issue.
It was a safety issue.
Which is this is also, and I'm on that job too, by the way. And she's going to go back. It's Diane Stive. She's going to go back with those materials and create something, very similar to give you the same
And
feel.
what do you think the use of this building was?
I mean, I think as you see it now, I think it was storage and probably an agricultural use of some sort. So I'm feeling like we need a, I don't know, just on this one, but I feel like we might need a committee or something to kind of study these types of buildings and identify them because I feel like they're threatened across the city. Um, Anybody that's buying in the historic district is pumping a lot of money into the property, and these are often looked at as unattractive and unwanted because they don't have a modern use per se. And I think now that all the outbuildings are threatened in the historic district, and I don't think we have a good handle on what we have and what we've lost. Um, and the more that we lose, the more precious the few that we have left become. So I don't know if you guys are interested in doing something like that, but I feel like it's kind of because we see them one at a time, and there's always a good reason. I mean, they were never built to last 200 years. You know, they were usually built on the ground without foundations, and but we're losing them. So I don't want to be hasty with any of them. I would say it's probably the same thing as David. If I go look at it, yes, it's hodgepodge. But to Sharon's comment too, I mean, is the value. I think it's the bigger story, right? That these tell. That's the authentic Fredericksburg. It's not limestone and whatever. It's well, it was a mix of things, and you worked with what you had and you reused what you had. When you tore down Grandpa's barn, you brought it over and put it on the siding on your barn. So I feel like maybe we need to have something positive to come out of this would be to maybe identify and really evaluate and appreciate the outbuildings of Fredericksburg.
Yeah, what I'd like to see from the staff site visit is, do the research on the Sanborn maps. Was that structure present in the same dimensions? What's the earliest, record of the house or of the shed? And then give us an idea of approximate age and material. I'd feel more comfortable if I knew that.
So if we're going to table it for a staff visit. Do we need a motion for that?
If we do nothing, from what I recall, and our attorney online can help us with this one, but if we do nothing, it automatically moves to the next meeting, I believe, and then we have to take action. Technically, that's what I think. We can make a motion to do whatever we like this evening. But I think protocol is if we take no action, then it automatically bumps to January.
And I would feel much more comfortable voting to demolish it if, after the staff assessment, that deems that it is unsafe or unsavable.
Listen, would you move the outbuilding new construction to the opposite side of the lot? The rods
Well, my client or my builder.
Your client paying the money, so.
Right. We did move, the other historical smokehouse over there because it was just a great place for the kids to have a playhouse and all that. And we thought that there's really not access because the driveway is on the left side now. So for their children's car to park on the right side makes sense with going through those gates and a pathway to get to it. They would have to park on the right, then walk. It just wouldn't. To me, it's not even symmetrical. You kind of want to have that house with that little approach there, and it just makes more sense when you, especially from a bird's eye view, looking down. Everything's over there, and to keep that.
I mean, I fully understand in the middle of a project wanting to change functions of things, so and we deal with that, quite often. So,
I mean, like
in this case, we probably need a little bit more time to collect some more information. It's unfortunate city staff weren't able to go and do a site visit. I think that's going to clear up a lot of that ambiguity.
Yeah.
So, Elizabeth, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can.
Was David correct in that if we take no action on this, it automatically rolls over to January, and that would give staff time to go and assess it?
I'm looking at the ordinance right now. So So it does say that you can hold any additional meetings on it within 60 days. I would go ahead and just make the motion to table it, just as a rule, to table it to your January meeting.
Okay. And just kind of a reminder, whoever makes the motion, please include what information that we want the city staff to give us, so it's really clear what our expectations are.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman. In the matter of item 23-201, 503 West Austin, I move that the board table discussion till the January meeting, pending a report from city staff on the state and condition of the house if it is savable.
There's a second. Further discussion?
I can't, I've been in, it's not in better shape now than it was 4 years. So, because I think it could be torn down to expedite this, but I think there would be some concern about I don't know.
And I'm encouraged, and Anna or Shelby, when you guys go out after you've had time to look at it, maybe we can, offer to the board to go out and have and people we can go out and look at it all at the same time after city staff has had time to look at it. But, I would hope that we could do that possibly by the end of the year for the city staff. We can get that rolling. Be my request to staff. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of the motion to postpone this application to the next month, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Right. So we'll see you next month. Thanks. Moving on to discussion items. Update on East Main Street properties.
Well, not much of an update. Unfortunately, I've not heard back from any of those property owners on their plans or, the last I heard, it's just difficult for them to get out there and do the work in the TxDOT right of way. I know Mr. Pinnock had ordered his replacement post, but just had not gotten a contractor to get out there and do the work. So not much of an update, unfortunately.
Okay. Let's move on to item number B, the 1149 Highway 87, the possibility of the landmark. I think there's some information in our packet. Personally, I know we're all familiar with the why there.
So just provided a little bit of information there. Again, I've not had enough time to do full-blown landmark research. But as some of you will remember, this was the Stewart filling station. It's recently owned by Clinton Stewart.
We have a date of when it was made and constructed.
In a quick research, I couldn't find it. I want to say it was 30s or 40s. And the other part that I wasn't able to take the time to do was to kind of look at the prototype. So from the Texas, there's that book I've referenced before that looks at all the gas stations across Texas, and each type of station, each brand kind of had several prototypes, right? So kind of analyze it based on that. It was well, I didn't put them in there. Richard, do you remember?
Richard's not here.
Oh, did you leave?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, he
do you remember as far as the brand? Sure, do you remember the brand?
No, I guess.
In the packet, it says it was a Chevron. In the illustration with the different service stations in Fredericksburg, but that was 77, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Originally, and there's a photo. I don't know why I didn't touch it. family that owned it originally, they still have family members around. Just haven't had a chance to kind of reach out to them to get more information, but they're still around. So, and then the new ownership, the DC partners out of Houston that are looking to do the hotel development there at the Y are aware that you're looking to landmark it at this time. They don't have it. They're showing it on their plans. They don't really have a use for it per se, but they are showing it. So I think it is timely. You know, if this is the direction I want to go, to indeed landmark it. Now I'll say we'll probably need to. Oh, you can't see what I'm looking at, but the GCAD map shows the old parcel. When they bought it and platted, they changed some of the lot lines, but I think we could look at the possibility of that original lot line or something kind of tighter to protect the gas station without interfering too much else with the property. So, because the Klingelhofer house is also on the same larger tract now. Yeah.
What are the board's thoughts on landmarking this asset?
I think it's good.
Go ahead, sorry. I was just gonna say, I just still need some more information. I just don't feel like I have should to make a decision.
Right, we're not asking for a decision tonight.
Just direction.
If you feel like it's something that I should consider or continue pursuing,
Yes.
researching.
And yes, I do feel like, and right, continuing research is needed.
I realize this is out of our purview as Historic Review Board, but is it out of our purview as concerned citizens of this town? I'm wondering if that filling station being a landmark will be a deterrent to TxDOT to work out this terrible intersection here, which has absolutely got to be done if there's going to be a development there. So just looking at the diagram. Go ahead, Anna, I'm sorry.
Not exactly. So TxDOT doesn't have a. Back when Seven Hills was considering it, TxDOT showed them something that would have teed off the intersection there, that created the T intersection, and essentially cut off this property, and would have made it, I guess, available to kind of absorb into property. There's a diagram that's shown, but TxDOT doesn't have any funding for that project. It's not a high priority for them. We're meeting with TxDOT and the new developers next week to kind of talk about all of this. I don't think landmark designation would impact that one way or the other. With the model that I've seen, what TxDOT had proposed would essentially just cut this off, and then that land could be, redone, and you would reclaim some of the existing right of way, some of the street, some of the 290 frontage would then be available, right? You could make something bigger out of that. So I don't think landmark designation would prevent TxDOT from doing what they would need to do, but it would, the landmark ultimately could be demolished, in certain circumstances. But
I mean,
again,
TxDOT can
we
use
started
eminent
a
domain.
conversation about gas stations a few years ago, and the story they tell on the development pattern in Fredericksburg, and this is definitely a landmark in that it marks the Y. Everybody said the gas station at the Y. So it's probably one that's worth at least looking at landmarking.
Well, we almost lost it a couple years ago by not designating it. So I think we should spend more resources and get the history on it.
So,
I think we'll lose.
sorry. On the diagram that's on the screen, Anna, the larger building is the Klingelhofer house. No, that's not the Klingelhofer house right there.
No, the house that's shown there is actually gone now. So,
okay.
Rebecca, that was the historic house. They actually lived there, but that was Seven Hills developers, wanted it gone, and so they actually allowed it to be relocated. It's now Rebecca Kathy's home. So she had it relocated and rehabbed it. So it's living to see another day. It's just in a different location.
So it sounds like I'm hearing support from the board for city staff to continue to do the research on it, get the date, maybe a little more history on it before we can make the recommendation to city council. So add that to the list of things to do, Shelby. And then moving on to the final item for our agenda. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Too much to do in a day. Perhaps this research is done via committee, much like she suggested earlier. And we get some citizens and outreach programs, people that have been here for a long time, could tell stories about the place, perhaps contribute to the history and do some research on it.
Sounds like you just volunteered. Leave that.
Yeah.
Who would you like to join you?
I would be happy to help. Can't do it on my own.
So Anna, I don't know here, Amy sounds like she would like to be part of
I would love
that.
to be.
Okay. Any others?
Yeah.
Any other board members?
You can start with the extensive research that you did before on filling stations, Anna, when we were trying to landmark the one next door to churches.
Right.
So there is some good research done already. Part of it.
Just add it in.
Right. We'll just have it take Anna's research and focus it more on the historic property.
Right. And do the review of Sanborn maps and everything. Typically done. Just personally, I just want to make sure that we don't receive a demolition, request on this and we lose it.
Yeah.
So hopefully that won't happen because technically, if it's not landmarked, somebody could apply and demolish it tomorrow.
Is that correct? Or I thought that we discussed that a couple of meetings ago, that if this is on our radar and still being discussed on whether to make it a landmark or not, that it cannot be demolished until this decision is made. Am I right, Elizabeth, or am I wrong?
Well, I mean, so our demolition ordinance says that the historic preservation officer reviews every demolition in the city. So no matter what it is, all demos come through my office and sign off on most of those if they're not in the historic district. If they're not in the historic district and I think they're worthy of landmark, at least consideration, then we can take it through the process of doing the research and taking it to you guys and ultimately city council. Now that's obviously not the preferable way to do it. If I think what we are doing is the right way to do it, to show, hey, we're interested and work with the property owners to landmark it before there's a demo permit. But yes, the demo ordinance allows review of all demolition and then the potential to landmark something so as to save it from demolition. But that does require a super majority of city council over owner opposition.
Any other questions on that? If not, Amy's going to work with you, Anna, and whoever else would like to join. Please talk to Amy. And then hopefully in January we'll have a bit more information to make a good decision. So, director's report. Shelby? Yeah.
So, just another application for the Richard landscape. Is that another?
I just saw 2 items on the demolition of barn and new construction of guest house.
I'm just saying on our part, yeah.
Can't do anything. It's like we couldn't do the first one.
Yeah.
Well, on the application, it was a demolition of the barn and then essentially making room for the new construction. So just put the new construction on hold with the answer on the barn.
Right. So I think we covered what was on in the application. The director's report. Anna, do you have it or Shelby?
There's not too much to report. We had the final CPAC, that's the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee meeting today. So the first draft will be amended based on that meeting, and then we anticipate having the public draft available in January for feedback. Right now, it is about a 100-page document. Trying to whittle that down a bit, just to make it more user-friendly and easier to get through. So for you guys, a lot of the conversation's been around kind of downtown and how to preserve the character while continuing to allow a variety of uses. And the comp plan itself doesn't call for rezoning. Talks more about land uses than zoning, but also talks about density. So obviously, we'll encourage you guys to read that and comment when it comes out in January. So that'll be the big thing coming out of development services.
Thank you. Any other items to place on next month's agenda? Have you guys been out looking for properties and need to? Okay.
I know, I'm actually wondering if we should also make auxiliary buildings because a priority as far as demo by neglect, because it seems like this is happening a lot. And what do you think about that, Anna? Would you send out a letter for demo by neglect for like a garage like this?
Would I send out a demo by neglect letter for auxiliary buildings?
For like a shed or garage or an outhouse like this?
I mean, we could. There's nothing that says that we couldn't. So, kind of going back, what I was saying about auxiliary buildings, and then with Amy's comment about doing more research. I mean, other similar boards kind of have these subcommittees. You know, you could have a survey and research or a designation board committee. You know, that's kind of focused on a couple of topics. Maybe it's an individual property line, the one at the Y, but then overall looking at survey. You know, we did the big survey back in 2018, but we've not really done anything else since then. And it just seems like these are what 9 out of 10 demolition requests we get are for outbuildings.
Right.
So I would be very glad to get the committee of a few board members and maybe some public to kind of really focus on auxiliary buildings, really understanding them, and then being a little bit more proactive, maybe coming up with some best practices on how to maintain them and preserve them. So we have better answers when they come before us like this.
I mean, I'm just kind of thinking back to last month's discussion around the loss of the old barbershop at Hondo's.
Exactly.
But how many of us know? What about that that 2-story building back behind Hondo's as well, with the roof caved in? I mean,
What was it? We don't even know.
Don't know what it was, but I mean, if we should put that on the list to send a demolition neglect letter on, and so we don't lose that.
So I don't think we got a clear answer to Jessica's question. If we had a beautifully maintained home with an ancillary building in the back that you could see was demolition by neglect, would we send a demolition by neglect letter just for that ancillary building? That was your question.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I wouldn't see a
We
problem.
can say yes.
You know, I think that's kind of a good idea because right now we're on the shirt tails of this kind of mini boom in Fredericksburg. A lot of development, a lot of overdevelopment, and I think people are very quick to come up with a really fabulous plan and swipe, and the history is lost. And I think that if they knew going in that that building has to stay, it absolutely has to stay, then they've proven already that they can come up with a really good plan around what's important to maintain the history and historical fabric of our district. You know, I just think density that we are and the overdevelopment that we've faced in these last little bit has changed it forever. And we can't fight change. It's always going to happen. We just have to push.
I mean, the mentality is if you can't make an ADU out of it, let's get rid of it.
Exactly. Yeah. Which is why the original presented this particular restoration.
That wasn't an ADU wasn't there.
I also think the idea that it's 70 years younger than the main building is part of its story. office space that Richard just helped me restore, you know, it's 1848, 1895, and then the garage building, which is now my studio, is 1952. So there are different periods of history that I think are part of the story. So I think
is
that's
the
a great
story of
idea.
Fredericksburg.
I think based on tonight's discussion, I think we made a huge mistake in the South Island. Should have just made restore. That to me, that's one of the best buildings that did work out.
It was 2 months ago.
2 months ago.
Yeah, South Island. It's probably the
Einstein's built that like how she's restored.
the old clear house.
That building was actually almost as big as the barn.
He's bigger than a house.
So we made a mistake there.
So I would encourage the board to be looking when you're driving around to and from the house and work. And if we see any buildings that need demolition letters, and we should look at it. I would recommend that 2-story building behind the Hondos. Have a look at it. Well, maybe talk about that next. It's one that pops my mind.
And I know money. I was supposed to think about the money, but restored that.
Isn't that what that is?
No.
No.
The one on Diane.
Yeah.
That was all original too. I mean, it was rickety. I went out and looked at that. It was
I don't know what that is, but if we're going to make somebody do demolition, restore it, we have to keep that in mind because not everybody is buying the stuff. Or factors.
But maybe we'll get more applicants for the grant. Maybe we'll get more applicants for the grant for little things like that.
anything else for the?
Yeah,
Go ahead.
my mom signed on the Palace Theater. Got a hold on it, rest of it, it's too bad, they're gonna say they can't fix it, you gotta make it fix it now. I've brought it up many times, I'm bringing it up one more time. Y'all don't wanna paint it, I mean, it's okay, that's, but the theater, when they redid the inside, they left the slanted floor is still there, they really can come back as a theater at some point in time. So, I think it's on us, outside.
But as a reminder, to send the demolition letter, you just have to have a motion approved, right, to do that? Does that have to be, Elizabeth, does that have to be part of the agenda item ahead of time or not?
Yes, I would think so.
So
We can add that to next,
On the agenda.
for next.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah, that's right. So Shelby, if we can include the old Palace Theater sign for the January meeting, and we do items of discussion. For demolition. And we'll add that 2-story outbuilding Hondos list.
Okay, I've got a question, speaking of signs. If there's a sign ordinance, but if signs are going up on Main Street in the historic district, in the central business district, that's on the register, historic register, is it up to us as our committee to enforce signage, or is it up to the city since there's an ordinance on signs?
To give you a complete answer, I would have to look at the sign ordinance, but my thought is that probably fall more into the purview of code compliance with the city.
Okay. So, would you let us know that?
Yes.
Because if that is an issue that is through ordinance, maybe that's something that needs to be brought up to council about amending ordinances before, again, things get way out of control. I'm wondering, I'm asking if it does,
Miss-
because of compliance, because suddenly we're getting signage.
Typically it does. They do.
So when an applicant submits a sign permit, application, if we find that it's in the historic district, staff reviews it for compliance with the historic preservation ordinance, and then the sign ordinance, it references sections based on zoning. So each zoning also has their own requirements. So we would review both and ensure that they were compliant. We would look at colors, placement, things like that.
And then if there's an issue, it always comes to the board. I remember a couple of years ago.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because you have a historic preservation officer that approves most of them, or if there's an issue, works with the applicant to change colors or font. Or usually the biggest concerns are placement of the sign, how it's affixed to the historic property.
So, Anna, what about these neon signs that are going up and signs that are going up in front of businesses that certainly have not come before us and don't seem to fit in anything that I've read in the ordinance about signage?
Yeah, so I'm sure people have noticed the Kyle sign. And I've worked with that applicant. That is actual like old school neon. So it's dark sky compliant. There's nothing. So we have a few things working. We have our sign ordinance, we have our design guidelines, and we have our outdoor lighting ordinance. And so there was historic precedent for the Kyle sign to be recreated essentially. Others that have gone up, let's say Brooks Bubble Bus.
Yes, let's do.
Okay, that one is a bit of a conundrum for me. I think that right now, the sign ordinance specifically says that anything inside the window is not a sign. But we've got lighting ordinance that talks about light trespass. And yeah, but maybe it's something that the city should bring up again. I think we're seeing more and more of it now with these the LED signs that are like open and they're in the window and they're not affixed on the outside, but they're clearly a sign and they're clearly visible and really detracting from the character of the district. So
yes,
I will tell you, I've attended national conferences where they talk about sign ordinances, and we probably our sign ordinance is very good, right? It's been in place for a long time and it's obviously worked. But across the country, I mean, their sign ordinances have gone to the Supreme Court. It's First Amendment issue. It's freedom of speech. So what we can regulate is really restricted. So I think, we definitely want to keep up parameters or, the lighting ordinance and such like that as well. So, yes, I mean, I think that is something that this board can talk to city council about as well. Express these concerns because it's definitely both, right? Obviously, it's the historic district, but these types of signs are popping up other places too. So it's not just the district, but it's very obvious in the district that hey, this doesn't seem right.
Anna, people ask me all the
Yes.
time about all the revolving characters, seasonal characters on top of the food store.
Yeah.
That's allowed. It's basically a sign advertising it keeps revolving.
Season.
Now it's Christmas, it'll be Easter for a while.
Yep.
Why is that?
Their decorations.
They're decorations, yeah. They're not signage. Yeah, and
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do
taste
that.
is incredibly hard.
I've tried to do that in my store. I got a fine. So
You got to find for your decorations.
I remember flags.
flags, yeah.
Well, flag's different. Flag is a sign. A feather flag is a sign. And that is described in our
American
sign
flag?
ordinance. No, a feather flag.
Okay, but had American flag on it. It's not.
Well,
It didn't
it's a feather
advertise
flag.
me. just like
It's a feather flag.
a chicken on top of that building that never passed in.
Yeah. No, we have definitions for what a feather flag is. So there, I mean, the things that we do have defined, we can control. But yeah, decorations.
I think it's going to be a hard sell to try to
What about-
regulate with inside on inside glass.
What about the
Yeah,
size?
That's a problem.
Because
It's hard to
we found out some
build
working on
sometimes.
the top block, their side on the side.
Right.
And, you know, picture of the top of it. And the question becomes, if you regulate what's inside the glass, how far back do you go?
Exactly.
All the way to the middle of the store, all the way to the back.
Is it visible? I mean, that's a big can of worms that I think there's probably other things we should
It's really hard to
focus
get
on.
anything changed inside the glass.
Right.
You may get some lighting.
Well, that answers my question. If it's not something that goes through the historic review board, if it's a sign ordinance, then it needs to be, then as a citizen, anybody that's concerned about it needs to speak to city council about it.
Right.
We have one more question and then I will stop. Same thing with enforcement about temporary buildings. We had a gentleman that came about his business. He went through every hoop he was supposed to. He had presented to us about having a temporary plastic cover on his outside eating. And it was in, the unprecedented heat of this past summer. And we turned him down because it was a temporary tent outside his restaurant. There are now 2 or 3 that are up on Main Street and stay up on Main Street. My question is, who enforces that? Is that if we enforced it with the board for the one applicant, who now enforces the others? It's just a question. I want to know who needs to follow. It's not a sunscreen, it's a plastic rubber band. The sunscreen chips. Sunscreen spray.
I mean, that's obviously out of code. I would imagine the code that, officer could go by and write them up.
Correct. If you find violations like that don't fit, the code enforcement officers, that's their responsibility. Anything that violates ordinances or zoning ordinances, they could issue either a notice of violation or a citation.
Is that Roy? Or
Well, we have 3,
Three.
Mr. Ray Ortegon, Ted Boyer, and Raymond Ubines.
And if everybody on Main Street put a chicken and a rabbit and a deer on their balconies and on the roofs and all up and down the side of the building, every building, okay, on Main Street, would the city say something about it? I'm talking about every business on Main Street. If what they're doing at the bookstore. Would the city say something about it? Yeah, they would.
Well, and across the street from there, there's somebody to do stuff on the balcony.
Yeah, because I would too.
The
You
big
talk
cat
about all the
that
historic
Christmas-
stuff, yeah, that's not historic, I'm sorry, and it faces that building
Oh,
altogether.
gosh.
That's cherished.
Yeah. And
So that brings up the same thing in my mind about signage too. Even though they're different, even though, people will say, this is a sign, this isn't a sign, this is decoration. Neon lights in the window, light ordinance is, I think when we're on the historic register nationally, I think that puts us in a category and we need to check it out.
If we had blow-up Santas along Main Street on the balconies, would that be
Everyone.
okay?
And no, it wouldn't, it'd be just as ugly as the rest of them. And they would, detract from the historical
Right.
values of the building. I'm moving to Richard.
Are we gonna do something about this decoration?
Well, hang on, I have a motion, I have a second, now
No,
open
two
for
seconds.
discussion. So we're in discussion, so,
Amy seconded. I think we talked about bringing it to council.
As a question from the historical report to city council.
actually, we could,
We'd like to
someone
vote
could
on
make
this.
another motion within this discussion period that we have right now. Someone could make a motion to review the decoration policy.
Their response.
No, we have a second. We have a second. It doesn't have. Elizabeth, as far as a meeting order, can we vote on? Can we make a motion in discussion of another motion, or not?
Can we add the agenda for next month?
Yeah.
I would recommend adding it to your agenda
Yeah,
because
okay.
I don't see the language on your posted agenda here
Okay.
for tonight.
Okay.
And I don't want to get outside of the purview of what you to discuss.
Okay. So let's add that to the agenda, updating or discussing the declaration ordinance, if that's adequate in the historic district as it stands. Have that discussion. And people could bring some examples if they wanted to. They snap pictures, bring them just for overall discussion, so it makes it really relevant. Great. So with that, we have a motion to adjourn, a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. We're done for the evening. Thank you. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
We already bought in.
We'll be back.
Yeah, we're on it.